In Obadiah 1:10, the Creator declares his final judgment over Edom using one specific word, and that word is Chamas, Hamas. Let that sink in. The people who today threaten to wipe Israel off the map chose as their name the very word God used to declare their destruction. They may not know it, or they know and don't care, but the original manuscript recorded that judgment 3,000 years before they ever existed. God said, "Because of the Chamas against your brother Jacob, shame will cover you, and you will be cut off forever." Obadiah 1:10. This is not a biblical coincidence. This is what happens when the violence of Edom meets its own name in the manuscript. But before we understand why this is so devastating, we need to go back to the womb where it all began, to the first act of crushing recorded in the Bible. Genesis 25:22 records something that common translations soften far too much. Rebekah was pregnant with twins, and the text says, Vayitrotzatzu habanim bakirba. The Hebrew root is ratzatz, which means to break, to crush, to collide with destructive force. Translations say the children struggled, but the original describes a war. This was not a baby kicking. This was a collision of natures that nearly killed the mother. Rebekah went to the Creator with a question that still echoes today. If it is like this, why do I exist? And the answer she received changed the course of civilization. 2 nations are in your womb, and one people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Genesis 25:23. In the ancient world, that declaration was incomprehensible. The birthright was sacred. It was not merely a financial inheritance. It was the channel of God's voice on earth. The firstborn carried the Bekorah, the right to represent the lineage before the Creator. Esau was born first, covered in red hair, and his name, Esau, means made, finished, complete. He was the sign of someone who seemed to have already arrived. Jacob was born grasping his brother's heel, and his name, Yaakov, begins with Yod, the letter that signals incomplete action, process. Something still in motion. 2 brothers, 2 natures, 1 womb. This is the code that explains everything you see in the Middle East today. But before Esau, there is Ishmael. And to understand the coalition of hatred in Psalm 83, we need to understand what the original says about him. Genesis 16:12 uses an expression that no translation can fully capture. Pere Adam, a wild donkey of a man. In the nomadic culture of the ancient Middle East, the onager was the symbol of untamable freedom. To describe Ishmael this way was not an insult. It was a prophetic declaration. He would be a force that would never submit to any established order. The text continues, "His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him." Ishmael grew up in Paran, in the arid plains that shaped his soul, while Isaac dug wells, a symbol in Hebrew of seeking depth and living waters. Ishmael mastered the surface with the bow. These are 2 cultures incompatible at the root. The culture of the well seeks what is hidden. The culture of the bow dominates what is visible. The conflict is not about land. It is about how man knows the Creator. When Hagar and Ishmael were sent away, the text says the Creator heard the cry of the boy. God did not abandon Ishmael, but the promise of Abraham did not pass through him. And that distinction, that election, is what generated the hatred that endures to this day. In Psalm 83:6, Asaph lists the Ishmaelites as members of the coalition that swears to erase the name of Israel. 3,000 years after the birth of Ishmael, the prophecy of Pere Adam still fulfills itself. Their hand is still against everyone, and what unites them all is the hatred for the Bekorah of Jacob. We return now to the most decisive moment in Esau's story. He sold his Bekorah for red lentils, and the sacred text uses the word vayibez, whose root means to treat as nothing, to declare worthless. to publicly humiliate. Esau did not merely sell the birthright, he despised it. Selling implies you recognize the value and surrender it out of necessity. Despising implies you publicly declare that it is worth nothing. Esau made an ontological declaration. He said that the sacred carried no weight against his stomach. The consequence was not merely the loss of an inheritance, it was the formation of Edom, Edom, which means red, the red of the lentils, the red of blood, the red of a rage that never extinguishes. Then comes the moment of Genesis 27:41. Isaac blesses Jacob, and the original uses the word vaishtom. The root satam describes a hatred that is stored, preserved, cultivated as an ideology of perpetual opposition. It is the same root that gives rise to the term adversary, the accuser, the one who positions himself to block another's destiny. Esau did not merely get angry, he established a constitution of hatred. He said in his heart, "I will kill my brother Jacob." That vow did not die with Esau on a battlefield. It became the institutional seed of Edom. In the thinking of the Hebrew scribes, Edom is not a geographic location. It is a spirit that finds hosts throughout history to execute its blood vow. In Esther 3:1, Haman is called Ha-Agagi, the Agagite. Agag was the king of the Amalekites, and Amalek was the grandson of Esau. The genetic chain of hatred is documented by the manuscript itself. Haman attempted the first documented genocide against the Jewish people, using the infrastructure of the Persian Empire. What you see in modern Iran is not the spirit of Cyrus the Great, the liberator who returned the Jews to their land. It is the resurrection of the spirit of Haman, the Agagite, operating from the same geographic territory. Now that you have the original in hand, open Psalm 83 and read verses 6 through 8 with new eyes. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, Philistia with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria also has joined them. Asaph was not merely praying, he was recording a prophetic map. Let us place the modern GPS over each name. The tents of Edom are the Palestinians and southern Jordan. The Ishmaelites are the Arab groups of the peninsula, including the ideological origin of Hamas. Moab is central Jordan. The Hagrites are the Iranian militias now stationed in Syria. Gebal is northern Lebanon, the base of Hezbollah. Ammon is literally Amman. The capital of Jordan still carries the name of the son of Lot. Amalek represents the networks of violence that strike from the margins, through Sinai and the southern borders. Philistia is the Gaza Strip. The territory is identical to the original. And those who govern Gaza today swear on camera to do what verse 4 describes. Tyre is southern Lebanon, the same territory dominated by Hezbollah, and Assyria is Iraq and Syria, from where the militias financed by Tehran operate. 10 nations, 10 groups, all listed by name in the manuscript 3,000 years ago, all present on the map today with verifiable GPS coordinates. And the declared objective in verse 4 is identical to what the leaders of these groups say publicly in 2025. Lo Yizaka Shem Yisrael, Lo Yizaka Shem Yisrael, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. This is not a war over borders, this is a war over a name. Whoever controls memory controls the future. And the manuscript says, the Creator has something to say about those who erase memories. Now we arrive at the point that the materialist world cannot process. Why? With all this coalition, with all this technology, with all this accumulated millennial hatred, does Israel still exist? The answer is not in the Mossad, it is not in the Iron Dome, it is in Rachamim. We have studied Rachamim deeply on this channel. The root is Rechem, Rehem, womb. The protection of God over Israel carries the density and intimacy of uterine protection. Isaiah 49:15 uses the word Rachamim, the intense plural of Rachamim. When the Creator asks, "Can a mother forget the baby at her breast? Even if she could forget, I will not forget you." For the vow of Esau to succeed, the enemy would have to rupture the matrix of the Creator, and that is beyond the capacity of any army. This does not mean Israel does not suffer. The Vayitrotzatzu of Rebekah's womb continues. The contractions are real, the missiles are real, the deaths are real. But the manuscript says the crushing has a purpose. It is the contraction of labor, not the destruction of the unborn. The hatred of Edom, the untamability of Ishmael, the Chamas of Hamas, all of them are instruments the Creator uses to press Jacob, not to destroy him, but to force him to the Jabbok, to the moment when Jacob stops running and begins to wrestle with God for his own identity. Israel means the one who struggled with God and prevailed. That name can only be given to someone who passed through the crushing and did not give up. Psalm 83 ends with a prayer, not a peace treaty. Asaph does not ask for a diplomatic solution. He asks the Creator to act so that the nations may know that YHWH Elyon alone is the most high over all the earth. They wanted to erase the Shem Yisrael, the name of Israel. But the manuscript says in Isaiah 49:16 that name is engraved on the palms of the Creator. There is no eraser for that inscription. If you made it this far, you understood that what is happening in the Middle East is not geopolitics. It is exegesis fulfilling itself in real time. The name they chose to identify themselves is in the manuscript as evidence of their own judgment. The map Asaph drew 3,000 years ago is the map that intelligence analysts use today. And the protection Israel receives does not come from Washington. It comes from the Rachamim of the Creator. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because in the next study, we are going into Ezekiel 38, and we will see what the original Hebrew says about what comes after Psalm 83. The word is waiting for you. See you at the source.